Hey everybody, Ann Louise Gittleman here for the First Lady of Nutrition podcast, and I'm so happy to have all of you with us. We're growing again by leaps and bounds, and I'm most excited to welcome my newest sponsor, CS Health, who has promoted a wonderful product called Vitalica, enzyme-activated broccoli dietary supplement with the most potent source of sulforaphane, which is so important as an antioxidant, helps post-exercise recovery, brain function, and skin appearance. So thank you, CS Health. Welcome to the First Lady of Nutrition podcast. And I'm equally excited to present to you Lloyd Burrell, who is the fantastic director of Electric Sense. Lloyd, you are a fellow electrosensitive hyperactivity individual just like myself. Tell me how you got started in Electric Sense.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, it's like not as if I went out looking for EMFs or to learn about EMFs. It's that EMFs found me. One day I answered my cell phone and I had a reaction, and a powerful reaction, an unpleasant reaction, a very quickly debilitating reaction. And, you know, people say to me, well, how did you know it was your cell phone? Because it was so darn painful. You know, literally over the space of a few calls, I was experiencing this prickly sensation around the side of my head where I was holding the phone, tingling skin, and then just burning up what I now call hot head and hot ear. And that's how it started. And it just went from bad to worse, really, from that point on. And I had these immediate symptoms. So that was sort of like the skin associated symptoms. And then there was kind of these neurological symptoms, brain fog, confusion, feeling just really out of it, not very coherent, not able to put my thoughts together, a bit like waking up from a really bad hangover just from using a cell phone kind of thing. And this is how it all started.
Did this happen to you all of a sudden? Was this gradual? Did it accumulate? When did you start using a cell phone?
It just came on out the blue. And this one day I answered my phone and that was it. Bam.
And that year was 2002.
That year was 2002.
Yes.
I actually started using a cell phone in 1997. I wasn't really a heavy user, certainly not by today's terms. And I was just using it because I was running a rental business at that time, and people were calling me to book rentals. It wasn't like I was calling out, people were calling me. And yeah, this was February, so it wasn't like a particularly busy time. It's well before the season. And it was obviously, you know, looking back now, I've researched it a lot and thought about it a lot and talked to a lot, had a lot of different opinions on it. And it's very clear, you know, this was like a toxic, like the way to explain it was my toxic barrel suddenly became full. And that, and hence the reaction. But the thing is that I wasn't only just reacting to my cell phone, I was reacting to pretty much everything electrical, electronic, my computer, the TV, the radio in the car, and even my corded landline. And so my life, and Louise, became a living hell because I couldn't, I mean, I love gadgets, and it stopped me. Well, it didn't stop me from working, but it made it incredibly difficult and painful. And obviously I went to my doctor, who sent me to other doctors, and basically they could find nothing wrong with me. And it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I was just kind of going around in circles. And then one day I came across an article in the Daily Telegraph, which is quite a highbrow newspaper. It was talking about a CEO of a big food group who'd got this thing. He couldn't use a computer, couldn't use a cell phone, was dictating everything to his secretary, and was having to switch the electricity off at night to go to sleep. And I'm going, wow, yeah, this is me. And you know, I'm not on my own. And they put a name to this thing, and it was electrical hypersensitivity. And that was really
hypersensitivity.
That's it. And you know what I learned, one of the things I learned through this whole process is that we're actually all electrically sensitive.
Yes.
It's just that some of us can feel it and some of us can't. And what I initially felt to be just a really, you know, a short straw in life, I subsequently came to realize was just such a blessing. And I was actually so fortunate. And I did have to kind of rethink how I live my life and reorganize And obviously I just started learning as much as I could about health and about EMFs. And that put me on this course where what I'm on today, this mission, which is to raise awareness about these dangers, and to share solutions. And, I've got a particular perspective like yourself, I think, is that once you've been affected by this thing, and you feel, it's so profound. And because it's like, once you what the science is saying very clearly is that EMFs affect everybody. Again, it's just some people can feel it, some people can't. But, EMFs impact everybody. You can't feel it, but your cells can. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yes,
It's
they're
all happening at a
exquisitely
cellular
sensitive.
level.
Very, very, very true. When I wrote my book, Zapped, which was now 11 years ago, because I am just like you, an electro hypersensitive individual, the message was not received well. How is the message received in this day and time with the onslaught of 5G?
Well, I can tell you it's not received well at all, but that is not putting me off. And the more obstacles they throw at me, then the more determined I become. And
Mm,
so, I created my website in 2009. I did a big summit in 2018, EMF Health Summit. You spoke on that summit, and things were going quite well. And then in 2019, I was deplatformed with a load of others like Dr. McCullough and Green Med Info and so on. And so basically it amounts to censorship. I also wrote a book that year, which came out, and I put it on Amazon. Amazon won't let me promote it. I'm censored on Facebook. And so my website is kind of rather non-existent compared to there's great information on there, obviously, but people can't find it. And so now with 5G, there's good and bad. And the good news is that more and more people are aware. But the other side of the coin is that it's increasingly difficult for people to actually hear the truth on this. And that's all I'm interested in telling people, really, is the truth. That's why I started on this, because I wanted other people to know what was going on, and that, hey, look, this happened to me, could happen to you.
and it happened to me, so I know it's very much an issue. But the question is, how does one know if one is electro hypersensitive? Is there a series of questions that one can take? Is there any kind of questionnaire that's out there? Would a doctor necessarily know how to diagnose it? That's my quandary here.
There's few doctors that really understand this very well. There's a Dr. Belpom here in France who's done some work on this, and developed some markers to, establish if someone can be called electrically hypersensitive. People that are electrically hypersensitive, like most of them know it, or anyway, I won't say most of them, but if you're hypersensitive, then you've got a reaction around a cell phone. The problem is, it's not really the hypersensitives, it's more the people. It's just like everybody is being impacted by this, and it's adding to everybody's toxic barrel. And with what's
Mm,
going on today, it's
mm,
incredibly, when I see people walking around with masks and so on, and following the government advice here in France, and I'm following, what's going on in the US, what's going on in the
mhm,
UK, and they're not talking about what they should be talking about, which is the immune system. And
mhm.
we should be looking at everything that impacts the immune system. So,
Yes.
obviously I talk a lot about EMFs because that's what I know a lot about. And it is very profound about, how EMFs impact our biology. But it's not, obviously, what's going on in health is not all about EMFs. It's EMFs and everything else. There's so many other toxins out there, so many other stressors. And it's this whole, it's the whole shebang, and you throw EMFs into that. And I call the EMFs the super toxin, in the sense that there is this very prolific effect, exponential effect, this synergistic effect of, you get the EMFs and the other toxin. It could be the mold, it could be the chemicals, it could be infection, whatever. And it's not 2 and 2 equals 4, it's 2 and 2 equals 10 or 100. And this is how EMFs are, because again, we are electromagnetic beings,
Mhm,
right down to, what's the definition between life and death? It's actually voltage across the cell membrane. It's voltage. That's what really life is about: electricity, electrons, and charges. not about chemicals. So yeah, I'm not saying chemicals aren't important, but we're actually living in this electromagnetic world,
Soup.
electromagnetic universe, and we can't ignore that. And the more we ignore that, then the more I think, and what I'm seeing is the more we're kind of going in the wrong direction in terms of what's been done, in terms of health generally, and particularly because, with this new 5G world, which is coming, and I can talk about this a bit more if you want, but it's really going to change things quite considerably.
Tell my listeners in a very basic way what the most common symptoms are of electrohypersensitivity. What can they expect? Is there anything strangely connected to it? I know excess saliva, people that blush all the time, that may be some sort of electrosensitive symptom or such, people that go on airplanes and have consistent nosebleeds. Give me the most unusual symptoms and the most common.
Well, the most common really is how it impacted me. So, is this the skin issues, the tingling, the prickly skin, the brain fog, sensitivity to light is another big one, which came over just days later. Um, Tinnitus is really many people are suffering from skin tinnitus. So
Yeah.
just it can be all kinds of skin problems.
Mm.
Um, and tired, this massive fatigue. So I've always been a fairly go-getter kind of person, but this thing just knocked me out completely. And, I could go to bed and sleep for 12 hours and get up, and I was just knackered. I was just a zombie. I was just a walking zombie. And no matter what I did, I couldn't seem to overcome this tiredness. So that's heart problems. That's another one. There's a
And
lot of
why would
studies
you
on.
say, and I just want to
Mm.
jump in here, why would you say heart and brain problems are very connected to EMF overload?
Well, quite simply, because this is what the science is showing us with notably the work of Dr. Martin Paul, Professor Emeritus at Washington State University,
A good
and his
friend.
work on the, brilliant man. He should be given a Nobel Peace Prize. Honestly, it's just absolutely brilliant what he's done. And he's given us this understanding of how EMFs impact the body via the cell membrane, these voltage gated calcium channels, these little gates which are opening and closing and letting in just the right amounts of calcium.
Mm.
Except unfortunately, EMFs mess all this up and letting in too much calcium and causing, quite simply, premature aging, what Professor Magda Havas calls radical aging syndrome, RAS. And this molecule peroxynitrite, sorry, I don't want to get too technical, but it's just like a chemical cascade which is set off, and oxidative stress is a big part of it. I mean, if anybody who's, I'm sure you talk about that a lot, free radicals, oxidative stress, and EMFs are driving all of this calcium overload in the cells. And this, we have massive concentrations of these VGCCs, notably in the heart and brain, to answer your question. So those are two particular areas, and also the reproductive system. And that's another biggie, what it's doing. There's a lot of science on that, hundreds of studies on how it's impacting the male, in terms of sperm production. And there's less studies on females, but in a way it's more concerning with regard to women, because women are born with one set of eggs, and EMFs zap your eggs, ladies, and once they're zapped, that's it. You can't go out and buy some more.
So do you think that's one of the reasons women have such trouble conceiving in this day and time?
you know you're looking at, when you look at the stats, it's just very alarming.
Astounding, very
Yeah, it
astounding.
is very alarming. Obviously, we can't say this is all down to EMFs, but there is the science there. As I say, there's a lot of science. So if the guys have got very poor quality sperm because of this, which we know this is one of the effects, sperm motility, sperm quality generally, sperm mobility, lots of different ways that sperm is impacted. And when you add that into how it's impacting women, we've got studies on, how EMFs are causing miscarriages, how, when the baby is in the fetus, what is that? It's a big bag of water, and, that's highly conductive. And so, ladies, if you're using a cell phone, next to your, just if it's anywhere near your body, then that fetus and that baby is going to be impacted. That's for sure. So can we say this is the cause of, what's this decline in fertility and so on? Solely, I don't believe that's the case, but I really do believe it is a major factor, which
mitigating factor. Agreed.
Yeah,
I
it has
so
to be taken
agree.
into consideration. Yes.
What about, let's talk a little bit about tumors, the particular tumors on the ear, the brain tumors, and the parotid gland tumors, which was my first sign of EMF toxicity.
Well, there's been quite a bit of research. I mean, most of the research has actually been done on the brain, and the biggest study that we have today is the NTP, National Toxicology Program study, which came out 2016, 2018, $30 million study paid by US taxpayers. And they came out on clear evidence of cancer for schwannomas, that's of the heart, and some evidence of cancer for gliomas, so of the brain. And, the problem is that when there's a lot of massaging going on, with all of these studies. So it's rather misleading for people who hear about when these studies are reported in the press. They tend to be massively underplayed in terms of what they really found, and this was the case with the NTP study. And nevertheless, there was some evidence of these gliomas, and other studies have come to similar conclusions, notably the Interphone study, huge study, again, 13 countries, 2010 study, $25 million study that was. And they came out saying that 1,640 hours of cell phone use, or starting from at least 1,640 hours, then that increased the risk of gliomas by 40%. Now, that's a bit mind-boggling. Doesn't really mean anything, does it? 1,640 hours. But that was over 10 years. And if you break that down, that actually works out at 30 minutes a day. So what we're saying is that study, what it actually said was using your cell phone for just 30 minutes a day can increase your risk of a brain tumor by 40%. So, and let's not forget, even the World Health Organization, as I'm sure, I mean, they're really just puppets, for so many different industries, but notably the telecoms industry, when they came out in 2011 and said that cell phone radiation was possibly carcinogenic. They classified it as a 2B. Obviously, since then, the evidence is very clear that it is actually, and it should be classified as a known carcinogen. So, yeah, it is incredibly confusing for people because the studies, to do these studies, they require a lot of money. And then often it's, the vested interests are there, and they're just wanting the studies to say what fits in with, basically them trying to sell as many cell phones as possible.
So do you think there's any connection between 5G and the virus? And we all know the virus. And this is a loaded question, but I know we spoke a little bit offline. I want you to talk.
This is really, really hot potato.
Yes.
And I have to be incredibly careful what I say here because,
Go ahead.
I'm not a doctor, okay? So I'm always very eager just to tell people my little story before I start talking about EMFs, because I don't, Anne-Louise, frankly, I do not pretend to be an expert. So I say my thing, and then if people want to call me an expert, whatever. I'm good with that, but I'm not trying to be something I'm not. But I have done my research on this, and there is, I published a really detailed scientific article with nearly 100 scientific references on my website. You can go there and check it out.
Which is
electricsense.com.
okay.
And the article, I believe it's still on the homepage. It might have slipped off, but if you do a search on it, then you'll find it, COVID, or you should use the bottom search box, not the top one, which is a Google one. It won't give you anything. This gentleman called Paul Doyen did some really brilliant. He's a building biologist, and he was actually in China at the time this broke out, and he kind of put two and two together, certainly with regards to the correlation, because there is a correlation, with what happened in Wuhan and the introduction of 5G in Wuhan, and then boom, within like 2 months, this thing called COVID-19 suddenly comes on the scene. And then, but not just in Wuhan, in other Chinese provinces, very strong correlation. That's to say, where all the, where there was, because I mean, Wuhan, it's 5G city. It's a model city. They should be have been incredibly proud of this city, but obviously things didn't turn out quite how they planned. But it was, I mean, it's thousands, 10,000 antennas, I believe, in the Wuhan area, and there's something like 10,000, or there was anyway, in the United States at the time of the article. And then all these other places, which there is correlation again, and obviously, correlation, not causation. So let's not get carried away with it. But it is certainly at the outbreak, there was a strong correlation. South Korea also, and there's a number of countries where we could see 5G introduced, COVID got really bad. And then beyond that, just in terms of this, how, again, a lot of it's back to the immune system, because EMFs impact our health in so many ways, as you know. And one of the important ways is that how it impacts the immune system. And it can go both ways. It can stimulate it, or it can suppress it. Okay. But there are hundreds of studies. What is clear is it dysregulates the immune system. And certainly just with regard to that, when we understand that it's super important to have a tip, well, maybe people don't understand, because, from where I'm sitting, this is just not being talked about, how to bolster your immune system at this time, when we know that, dealing with the virus is having a strong immune system is absolutely vital. And yet people are not being told this, not sufficiently clearly, in my view, anyway. And then when we understand how EMFs, the EMFs impact the immune system, and just that alone. And then there has been some research done on this, and it is, again, incredibly difficult to get research done, because who's going to pay for this research, and then who's going to publish it? That's the other thing, particularly just even on the EMFs and the 5G, it's a challenge, I know, for a lot of researchers. They just don't get the grants. And with this whole COVID-19, it's such a hot potato. But there is a researcher called Dr. Beverly Rubik, Dr. Robert Brown. He's an MD, she's a PhD, and they have actually put out a paper, and I interviewed her a while ago, so you might be interested in having on as a guest. She speaks very well on this topic. So they've actually put out a paper on the evidence for a connection between COVID-19 and wireless, and particularly 5G. And they've actually pinpointed 5 ways in which this virus intersects with these 5G's exposures. And so one of those ways is oxidative stress. Mm-hmm. Another way is the immune system generally. Changes in the blood. She actually did some research on the blood back in 2014, I think it was. Some live blood analysis, and she found then, nothing to do with the COVID, that just having a cell phone in a bag, So this was actually people having a cell phone switched on in a backpack caused this rouleau effect, this blood to stick together, cause this spikiness of the blood, what they call incarnocytes, and long-term cause reduced blood clotting time, reduced hemoglobin, etc. So that was just a cell phone in a bag, not even switched on, not even using it, for I think it was 45 minutes. And so you obviously the effects are worse for when you use it. And notably, she found that the effects were worse for the over 50s. I'm in that category. And I'm not sure if you are, probably not yet. Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm way over 50. I'm going to be closer to God only knows what very quickly.
No, let's not talk about that.
But the point being is the older you are, the more sensitive you seem to be.
So there's three categories of a population which are particularly impacted by EMFs. And those are the elderly, the young, and the pregnant women. And, of the whole thing, and the reason why I actually started talking about it, I just shot a YouTube video. I shot a video in my living room and I put it on YouTube, and that was in 2009. And that was like the beginning. And I was just frankly pissed off. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that about, seeing children hold phones and use phones. I was not well with it. Honestly, I needed to say something to somebody, and I'm not really one to complain. And I thought, well, look, I'll just put it on YouTube. And that's how it started. And it just grew from there. And then it grew into a mission of wanting to share solutions. But so those are three categories. But to get back to your question about the COVID-19, so there's 5 ways that these wireless, this 5G, all these different kinds of wireless, these effects, the wireless intersects with the COVID-19 manifestations. And so there's the changes with the blood, there's the oxidative stress, which I was mentioning earlier, there's the immune system disruption, there's this increased intercellular calcium, which I was talking about, and then these effects on the heart, which I was talking about. And all those 5 things, which are bioeffects of this thing we call radio frequency microwave radiation. Okay, folks, that's what it's really called. When you use a cell phone, you put it to your head, you're exposing yourself to radio frequency microwave radiation. So those 5 things which I've just gone through, those are the 5 bioeffects, 5 of the because there are many, but those 5 bioeffects tie in with COVID-19 manifestations. Yeah. Amazing. So in terms of the blood, the oxidative stress, the immune system, the intracellular calcium, the cardio effects. If you look at what the symptoms are, what's been observed in people who have the COVID, then that is it. It's the blood, oxidative stress, immune system, intracellular calcium increase. Because the thing is, right, really important point is just that this increased intracellular calcium, this preps the cell for viruses. It makes our cells really vulnerable to viruses.
Exactly.
Just that in and of itself.
And are you aware that it was a cruise ship? I think it was the Princess Diamond actually had some 5G antennas on board.
Yes. I've heard this, and that was in this really rather brilliant article that Paul Doyen did. But obviously we're back to the correlation thing. But what we need to do is we need some solid science on the links between the two, and how, these wireless exposures are, they're bad news, very simply, but they're creating this cellular damage, which then the virus just has a field day.
Especially because of that calcium. I'm so glad you brought that up, because virus loves to multiply in the presence of excess calcium. So the calcium dysregulation of the EMFs is a huge, huge aspect here that most people don't recognize. Thanks to Martin Paul that clarified it. It was first brought into play years ago, however, by an English researcher, but he's really clarified most of that for us. So the calcium connection is absolutely huge. I'm just so glad that you've reiterated that. But I have another question. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
So I remember when doing my book and doing all kinds of interviews on the circuit, people were concerned about the difference between non-ionizing and ionizing radiation, saying there was no proof that non-ionizing radiation from cell phones and towers and Wi-Fi did anything, but that the ionizing radiation from X-rays, CAT scans, and nuclear fallout was the real issue. How would you answer that question?
Well, the whole ionizing, non-ionizing thing, it's like, okay, let's imagine there's this spectrum, we put everything on it, whereas down at the bottom, we have electrical power, what we call power frequency, like you're in the US, so like the 60 hertz, and then we're moving up, and then we get the, well, the dirty electricity actually is in between the two. Not many people know what that is, but that's literally intermediary frequencies in the kilohertz range, which was on electrical wiring, which is just, it's in every home and office basically now, because of all these energy saving devices, which are causing all this electro pollution on the wires, which of course doesn't stay on the wires, and there are links to cancer with that. So we've got this. So let's imagine. So what they're saying is, okay, so folks, you've got the spectrum there, and on the left of the spectrum, you've got this low frequency, very long wavelength, and then the right of the spectrum, then it's high frequency, shorter wavelength, and so we've got this power frequency at the bottom, and then at the very top, we've got this, like, gamma radiation and all that, nuclear and everything. And we've got this line, folks. Okay, we've got this line, and everything to the left of that line is non-ionizing, perfectly safe. Okay, folks, and everything just to the right of that line is ionizing, so it's got sufficient power to break bonds in atoms. Okay, and so when it's ionizing, everybody's agreed that that's dangerous. And obviously everybody knows, like, a nuclear bomb's dangerous, and the X-rays are dangerous. But when it's to the left, folks, so that's things like cell phones and the power frequency and this dirty electricity or intermediary frequencies, all that's safe. Now, come on, how can where, just think, common sense, doesn't nature have like lines where all of a sudden something's dangerous and then it's safe? And no, it just doesn't work like that. And what really thousands of studies have now shown is that between ionizing and non-ionizing, the mechanisms of harm are very different, and it's way more subtle. And so there is this, again, back to this VGCC thing, the voltage gated calcium channel. But there's not only that, there's other mechanisms at play. It's just that one is really well supported. There's like damage to the blood-brain barrier also, which is a huge one. It's huge. There's a lot of science behind that. And so it's these subtle effects, and that's the difference. It's how it affects. So with the ionizing, it's more like, it's very clear, and it's high energy, and nobody disputes it. But these subtle effects, the thing is, the result is exactly the same. Is what it boils down to. The actual damage it comes down to, in terms of your DNA, single strand, double strand breaks, proteins, how it impacts your stem cells, disrupts cell division, the mitochondria, these energy factories in our cells, how it impacts that. All of this, what it actually does to us at a cellular level is broadly the same, whether it be ionizing or non-ionizing. So why aren't we doing something about it?
So what are we doing about it? That's number one. Number two, what are you doing about it? And then I'll share what I do about it. I mean, I'm currently on a grounding pad as you and I are speaking. I have shungite on my left hand because energy comes in through the left side of the body. I'm going to be trying out Wendy Meyer's new energy protecting pendant. I mean, what can we do as well as limit our exposure? What do you do on a daily basis?
Well, so I've developed this, my years of struggling with this. I developed this really simple protocol to deal with it, and the protocol goes like this. I call it the and the So that's a U for understand, an M for measure, and another M for mitigate. So let's just walk you through that very quickly. First thing is to understand, because, everybody, including me, when I got this thing, I just wanted it to go away. I didn't want to learn about EMFs and health and everything. I just want to get on with my life and, live happily ever after with my wife and kids and everything. And I didn't
Are
want
you are
to.
you in France because you think it's healthier than other countries, by the way? I need
No,
to.
no, I'm in France because my wife's French.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, and we moved here, and that's the irony of the thing is when this happened, I was living the dream, because I'd always dreamt of having my own business, and we got this rental business, and we were doing well. It was so 2000 it was like 5 years into it, and we were doing really well, and we're eating well. I was jogging down at the beach. I was going to the gym, and yet this EMFs just took me by surprise totally. And so there was obviously very clearly something I was missing, something very significant I was missing, and I realized what that was afterwards, and I'll come to that in a moment. But so the first thing is to understand, because otherwise what you'll do is you'll do like I did, is just like go out and buy everything and anything that gives any hope of making it go away. And that's what I did. Every harmonizer, pendant, chip, resonator, everything imaginable. I spent a fortune on all of this, and a few of these things worked for a little time, but nothing worked long term. The only thing that worked is this and that's why I share that, and that's why I always come back to this. And people say, you've heard of that so and so pendant, whatever. What do you reckon? And I'll go, look, do the first, and then if you want to go and spend a few $100s or a few $1,000s or more, even for some of these devices, then okay, add that in. And frankly, I've been saying that for a long time, and I have now reviewed some of these devices, but I still say, when you've gone through this thing, then it's my duty. I'm not going to start saying to people, go buy that and you'll be fine. It doesn't work like that. There are no quick fixes. The works, and the is understand. So it means understanding this whole thing, and I've talked about it a little bit. This dirty electricity and this radio frequency microwave radiation and this electric fields and magnetic fields, and this frequency and wavelength thing, without going into but just beginning to get curious. Subscribe to my website, or EHT, or go to the bioinitiative.org, or the Zori Glazer archive, which is another brilliant resource which Magda Havas has put online. The Magda Havas website also is another. Yeah. So, don't take my word for it, but just get curious on this. And I do podcast, and this is all I talk about pretty much, and energy, by the way, because it all is energy. Okay. And get curious. That's the first thing. And then you'll realize how stupid it is to think that you can just buy something and plug it in or whatever, or wear it, and it'll just, sort you out. It won't. Okay. It might help, but there's lots of things to be done to be sorted out. So the first thing is to understand, get curious. Okay. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's a bit of a learning curve. I'll agree to that. The second thing is to measure. So get yourself a meter, something like the Trifield TF2. Frankly, if you don't measure, you're totally in the dark.
Right.
And you need a decent meter. And a decent meter, it costs a bit of money, $200, something like that, $150, $200. I know that's a lot of money for some people. But if you haven't got the money, then save up. It's worth it. Or get one between friends. You don't have to have a meter all the time. But get a meter. At some point, you need a meter. Because, like when like 2/3 of homes in the US, according to one study, have high magnetic fields.
Yes.
I mean, we've not even talked about that.
Yes.
That's another subject, because everybody's like 5G and, cell phones, but that actually wired is, in my mind, in my view, just as big an issue as wireless. Okay. So we have to deal with the wired, and we have to deal with the wireless. And to do that, we need an EMF meter, which can measure all of that, and probably a dirty electricity meter also. Unfortunately, you need 2 meters. And then the third thing to do at some point is to mitigate. What does the mitigate mean? It means like just reducing your exposures. And how can you do that? Well, there's three ways. First thing is you can turn the thing off. Just turn the darn thing off, whatever it is. If you can, if it's yours, if it's a cell phone. If you can't, then you increase the distance. Remember, distance is your friend with these EMFs. The further you get away, even a short distance away, gives a significant reduction in exposure. Sometimes it can be thousands of times reduction in an exposure from literally millimeters, gaining millimeters. And I mean, anyway, don't put a cell phone next to your head, folks. Honestly, it's not a good idea. It's not. I mean, I laugh and I do, when I talk about this, I keep laughing every now and again. And I think, Lloyd, why are you laughing? It's really serious. But it's just my way of dealing with it because it is serious. And people, there's a lot of science here and people do need to take action. And the third thing is to shield. And, I always say shielding is a last resort, because that's the other thing is like, you've got most people are not feeling this and really couldn't care less. And then you've got people that are health conscious, which maybe are going to start taking some steps. And then you've got the other, this tiny minority of which we are part of, Anne Louise, who's like suddenly become electrically hypersensitive. And it's, oh my God, what can I do? How can I shield my bedroom? How can I stop this thing? And it's like, oh, okay, slow down. Take a deep breath. Shielding is a last resort. So shielding, because, when you shield, inevitably you're introducing these man-made materials into your environment, and that could be causing other problems. So you might you might solve your EMF problem, but you could cause another problem, chemical reaction, off-gassing and so on and stuff. And, having a lot of these materials have got metal in them and silver and, aluminium. And so you don't really want that in your environment unless you have to. And my approach is it's really about reconnecting with nature, because that's where the answer really is.
I love that concept. How do you reconnect with nature? Are you a believer in grounding or earthing?
Oh, absolutely. It's the first thing I do every morning. And this is another, it's so controversial, even that. And there's, and the people at the what is it? The Institute of Building Biology, bless them, and I love them. And so there those, it's not that they're against, let's be fair, but there are EMF consultants which are going out there, not just building biologists, and they're saying, look, I'm going into people's homes and they are ground. And that's why I was kind of raising my eyebrows. You can't see me when you're saying you're grounding indoors, because I don't recommend grounding indoors. I recommend grounding outdoors. When I get up in the morning, then I go out and that's the first thing I do. And I actually, I speed ground. So I'm working with the universe here. And if you just connect into that, we're very powerful creative beings, and working with the power of intention. And that might sound really woo, but there is a lot of science on this also. And there's so many ways to reconnect with nature, but a lot of it is just get out in nature to start with, quite simply, and get away from the screens. And certain rules I have, like for instance, I won't do interviews any later than the one we've done with you. So it's now 10 to 8. It's a little bit late for me. I thought it was a video one, so I'm just going to switch it off. Actually, I've got a light in here which is very bright light, and I don't like that at night. So like we've not talked about lighting, but all that very bright white light, that's the simplest way of putting it, which are actually CFLs, compact fluorescent lights, and LEDs. These emit a lot of dirty electricity and frequencies, which again, it's not like you can see it. It's just, it's playing havoc with your circadian rhythm, this day-night cycle. And we're not, we've got the blue light in there as well. So we have not evolved to have this blue light at night, and screens have blue light, and this is a huge problem again. And there are, there's a lot of science on this, how just this alone can be a major disruptor of health and even promote cancer, just blue light at night. So even lighting, I'm really careful, with what lighting I'm exposed to. And honestly, I am, because it's not, I can't, it's like I live a normal life. No, I guess like compared to it's like I can use a cell phone. I do use my wife's cell phone. We've just been away for a few days, as I said to you just before we came on. And so when I'm away, I connect with her cell phone on a cable via my laptop. So I don't actually use a cell phone, but I'm using, literally holding the cell phone, apart from when I'm switching the thing on. But so there are so many ways you can use these technologies intelligently, um, and that they be low impact in terms of your health, but people just don't know. And this is my mission, so that people know about this. And so really, there's two things really. The thrust of what I'm doing is, firstly, it's this EMF thing. So it's dealing with these non-beneficial energies, which these EMFs are, these electromagnetic fields, these man-made electromagnetic fields from all these devices, of all this, everything electrical, basically. So it's wired and wireless. So it's mitigating your exposure to these non-beneficial energies. And then um, it's it's connecting with these beneficial energies, forces of nature, and energies and devices which mimic nature. And so this is where, again, we're back to this thing with the gadgets. Yeah, I mean, okay, certainly, I'm all for devices which can harmonize. And by the way, totally with you on the shungai, and that's one I particularly love because it's totally natural, and it's a rock. It's not even a mineral, and it's
Mm-hmm.
from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got this particular molecular quality. It's got these fullerenes in it, which you don't
Mm-hmm.
find anywhere else. They think it came from from a meteorite. And this is the only place, apparently it's on the border with Finland, where they found this. And there's studies behind this, how shungite has this harmonizing effect and an antioxidant effect. And I believe actually there is a quantum effect, but we won't go there. But it's very natural. And like, if there's one thing, I mean, just crystals and minerals generally. But for me, it's for somebody, if somebody's listening to this and they're looking for maybe something that they can buy to introduce in. So I wear shungite, and I also have quite a large shungite pyramid right in the middle of the house here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can the domes work as well. And so that is a bit more expensive. Okay. But just a small bit of shungite on a cord, that's what I wear. And it's natural, so it's natural. And anything which is a stone, it's another way of connecting with nature. So I walk around with stones in my pocket, so I'm very intuitive, and I pick different stones on different days. And sometimes I'll even pick up a stone off the ground. You don't have to it doesn't have to be something expensive. So I'm very intuitive, and that's the thing, is to listen to your intuition. But then one of the problems is, so many people are off skew with this whole EMF thing, that they don't have a clear link to their intuition. They've forgotten how to use it, how to listen to that inner voice. And that is so important. And so it's a whole journey, all of this. And yeah, it takes a bit of effort, but it's worth it. And particularly, if you've got kids, and really that is the most important thing for me to share about this whole thing. Because I say to people, look, if you want to stick a cell phone next to your ear all day long, and that's one thing, but letting children do this, honestly, it's criminal. It is criminal when you've seen the science. And the science has been really very clear since the mid-90s. Professor Gandhi did some brilliant work on this, and he showed quite simply, that children are not little adults, right? They're not like small versions of adults. Their bodies are not formed. Their immune system, again, is not properly developed. They have a higher water content. Just their skulls are thinner. The skull is thinner. Therefore, they put the phone closer to their brain when they're if they're using a cell phone. So there's a lot of, and the science has been replicated time and time again. And just that alone, it's like, what is this world that we're living in, where we're allowing this to happen? I mean, this is just so irresponsible. Parents should know this, grandparents should know this, people should know this. kids should not be using phones. So I know, so your audience is probably not kids, but I'm sure everybody knows, everybody has somebody who's got a grandchild or, knows kids and things. And, parents need to know this. Adults need to know this.
So I want to thank you for enlightening us. What is on the agenda for you next, Lloyd Burrell?
I'm going to continue on this path.
On your mission. You're a man with a mission.
I am a man with it. So I'm fortunate. So I know why I'm here. I know what I have to do. I never really understood. I don't think I'm particularly good at this. Like I said, I don't have a science background. I do have.
I think that's why you're so good at
it. Thank you. But I'm just trying to put it in terms which people can understand. And I guess I feel rather ordinary in many ways. And so I try to speak to people on their own terms. And that's what I will continue to do. And really to focus on people need to know that there are solutions. There are, that this is, even though you can't feel it, that you're being impacted by it. Therefore, you need to do something about it. And even if you don't want to do it, again, we're back to the kids thing. Whenever I'm saying like, okay, you don't want to do something for, for our kids, because that's humanity we're talking about here. If our kids are sick, then where are we going? And if you are feeling symptoms, then obviously your motivation is there to actually do something about it. But if you don't feel the symptoms, then research this, get curious, and then start making some little changes in your life. Maybe at some point you're going to buy yourself an EMF meter. And my work is really that, and helping these people that are super sensitive on how to deal with it, because I don't get the symptoms. I don't get the debilitating symptoms anymore. I'm finished with that. So I can go on long haul flights. I can sit in front of my computer all day long. If I use a cell phone a lot, like texting and stuff like that, or even on loudspeaker, then I'll feel it. It'll bother me, but then I can switch it off. So I'm very fortunate. And so that's where I'm going, is helping other people do that too. Because there's a lot of people that are suffering out there.
And don't know what they're actually suffering from. So I want to thank you for being my guest today on First Lady of Nutrition podcast. Will you come back?
Of course I'll come back.
I love it. And I want to remind everybody that many years ago, I wrote a book called Zapped, Why Your Cell Phone Shouldn't Be Your Alarm Clock, and 1,268 Ways to Outsmart the Hazards of Electromagnetic Pollution, which is a very good adjunct to electricsense.com. Pick up the book, visit Lloyd Burrell's website, and I want to thank you for being with me on another episode of First Lady of Nutrition. Everybody have a blessed, healthy week. Stay safe. Love you. Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Louise here with just one more thing. Thank you so much for being a fan of my work. And if you like this video, please check out all my other videos. Please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications.